This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
This job would be great if it wasn't for the fucking customers.
You're always this stupid. It is you take lessons. Just calm down.
Oh, fuck you!
You can't handle the truth.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
In other words, be nice, asshole.
Blood work, everything came back straight. I mean, everything is, yeah.
Well, I think that is an awesome place to start this episode. So welcome to another episode of Cues and Cucumber, the podcast where we point and laugh at stupid companies, customers, and coworkers alike. I'm Lara Mack.
And I'm Tanya Edwards.
Okay, we are back, bitches. First things first, we got a couple things on the checklist, and then we're going to get into the Theranos of it all. But first things first, we were hoping at this point we were going to have a new grandbaby.
We still fucking don't.
But he's taking his sweet-ass time.
So...
Come on, AJ.
Right, so...
Speed this up.
So, was it Monday?
Mm-hmm.
Avery calls. He FaceTimes me. It was either Monday or Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
He calls and FaceTimes me. And he just had this look on his face. And he was like, so I think Hannah's having contractions. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, that's right. You messaged that to me, and I thought, oh, my God, it's going to be any minute now.
Right. So I was just like, okay, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of freaked out. He was like, but Mom, you know, while we were talking, she had one. And he was like, but why is it? I said, I don't know where you thought a contraction would be, but that's why her belly looks like it's moving, because her insides... Her uterus and everything is contracting,
yeah.
And it's softening her cervix so that she can dilate and have the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, what the fuck, man? There's some freaky shit. And
What did you think happened, Avery?
Right. So he was just like, okay. So they were up all night, and she had a few, and she's starting to have more pressure. I took her yesterday to get a pedicure and stuff.
Right.
They're ready.
Nice. They're ready. So we will keep you guys updated on Baby Watch. Fingers crossed. That will happen soon.
Oh, I'm so sick of waiting.
I know. But we do have something to celebrate today that I text Tanya about first thing this morning. Is Brittany, bitch.
She's finally free.
She's free.
I mean, that is...
Congratulations, Brit.
Yes.
Oh, my God. And congratulations to the people, like the Free Britney movement. Like, they didn't just do
her
like
lawyers
hashtags. Like, they actually fought this fight with her
to help her.
Extraordinary. I thought her lawyer after the hearing yesterday came out, Rosengart, who I love him. I want him to walk her down the aisle. I really do. I keep calling him Rosendad. But honestly, he looked like he was gonna cry.
I mean, this girl has been through hell for like the last, I mean, before, you know, it had to have started before the last 13 years.
And then her mom kind of swoops in at the end, like, oh, by the way, can I get reimbursed for being your mom? That's pretty much what she's asking.
Right, that's what she's asking for, yeah. I've never been like a huge, oh my God, Britney fan.
No,
but
at the same time, she's a person.
She's a person, and she seems like a decent human being.
Yeah.
And I know that she seems like she's trying to do what's right for herself and her kids. I think that her parents really took full advantage of...
Oh, yeah.
Of her stardom, of her goals, of her, you know, starting out as a Disney kid and all the Mickey Mouse Club and then moving up the way that she did and everything. I think that they really jumped on that bandwagon and they bled it dry.
Absolutely.
They wanted to, but there are laws in place now to protect these kids because of older actors like Gary Coleman who struggled his entire life after all the money he made. Yeah. Because his parents took everything.
Now people are recognizing that and legislation is getting done and But I'm
happy for her. I'm happy for her.
I will link the episode that Emily D. Baker did because she's been on this for 2 years solid, and she was about in tears last night. So I'll post. We're not going to do like a deep dive on it. There's so many sources out there, but I will post Emily D. Baker's episode down below. So congrats to Brittany. Wanted to give a quick shout out to a place called Lighthouse Automotive. They pretty much took my car and
They figured it out.
they replaced the end. Pretty much they replaced everything on the inside of the car.
Oh, wow.
And now it works beautifully. It costs like $8,000. But with what they did to it, they were like, you should not have to do anything to this car for about 5 years.
Oh, good.
Because
Good.
they did everything. Because we were
Everything.
like, while it's all out, what else needs to be done?
Right.
And they were like, well, you could use new this, new that, blah, blah, blah. Like, they weren't pushing it. We were. So, but they got everything handled. They were amazingly professional, handled it. Appreciate you guys.
Well, I would just like to say that I want to give a horrible review
Oh, boy. What happened?
to Sophia's doctor's office.
Oh, Lord, what happened?
Because Sophia has been going to the same doctor's office for her entire life. Well, now it's like a clinic, right? And they have like a family practice, OBGYN, and pediatrics, right? Well, because she's 19 now, she had to switch over from pediatrics to the family clinic, right?
Right.
The family part of it. And if you're in Colorado, it's called Peak Vista.
Right.
And Soph can't afford health insurance on her own, being a student and working part-time. So, you know, we have her on, they have like a program that you can use. And it's so much your medical visits and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So she goes to the doctor. Her appointment was at 11. She calls me at 11:10.
Mm-hmm.
She's done. And I was just like,
Already?
oh, how are you done? Like, what? She was like, yeah, she told me I don't have strep, to just take some ibuprofen and eat some ice cream. Meanwhile, my child has big white pus pockets on her throat. She has not eaten in a week. So that night, she's getting worse. So I take her to urgent care.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have strep, but we think she either has mono or viral pharyngitis. So I was like, okay, you know. So they gave her 3 pills, and they were steroids. And then they gave her, because she had a sinus infection, they gave her a nasal spray. She's feeling a little bit better. I'm like, okay, good. Maybe the steroids worked. Thursday comes. I had to call off work because I had to take her to the ER. Because she got up Thursday, she was sick. Take her to the ER. They were like, yeah, you have strep. Here's some antibiotics. Okay.
Okay, what happened to the... Okay.
So, yeah. So, Friday comes along. I'm off work on Fridays. I am at the comedy club getting ready to see Affion Crockett, who's funny as shit. Mm-hmm. I'm not there 5 minutes. Taylor, her friend, calls me and says, hey, I just got over here, and Sophia, I think she has a fever. I'm taking her to the ER. I get over there. It's like 7:30 at night on Friday. Ask me what time I got home from the hospital.
What time did you... I want to say like
4:38 in the morning.
Oh, my God. Yep, I was close. I was going to say 4 in the morning.
4:38 in the morning we got home.
Fucking Christ almighty Jesus.
So...
That's a long-ass time.
Come to find out, she did have mono. She had severe mono.
Yeah.
Had she was misdiagnosed.
Had Peak Vista done
Had
their
the
job
first
at the
doctor
beginning.
right. So now I have a complaint in at the doctor's office, as well as through DORA, the regulatory agency.
Okay.
When I called to get the person's name that she spoke to, that she saw the first time, they gave me the wrong name 3 times.
Wow.
Please, if your child is sick, I don't care how old they are, believe them, and keep taking them to the hospital. And if you have to show your ass, then show your entire ass. Just like when Carly found out Stevie was sick, right? And they couldn't do anything, wouldn't do anything,
Yeah.
always constipated. And I told her that day, you need to go to the hospital
And show
your ass.
Yep.
And that's what I had to do.
And that's
at
what
the
she did.
ER.
And that's when they found out, oh, he's not constipated.
He has cancer. Right. The a million things were going, and the best part was, because of it had been untreated for so long, we had to wait even longer at the ER because they had to do a CT scan because they thought that she had abscesses in her throat from the fucking mono.
Oh, no Peak Vista.
If you're in Colorado Springs,
Just avoid them.
Yeah.
All right. So we got one more thing to talk about before we get into the Theranos of it all. I love our listeners. I really do. They blew up our inbox this week. Or maybe it was last week. I can't quite remember. With Instagram video from Dave Hollis. Do you remember when we talked about Rachel Hollis? That hoe with the books that said the woman who cleans my toilet?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I love our listeners because I haven't been paying attention to those two weirdos.
Right.
But he had a fucking meltdown on Instagram.
About what?
For 2 hours. 2 hours on Instagram Live.
So he yammered on for 2 hours about shit?
Oh my God. And I'm not gonna
was it just him?
Yep. And him, I would say, my opinion, neglecting his daughter, we'll say.
So she kept busting in like, Daddy, I'm hungry, and he was like, in a minute.
Exactly.
No!
For 2 hours. This like 4-year-old girl. Because he just wrote another book. And he just got done doing like 2 weeks of media blitz. Hasn't been around his kids while he was traveling. They finally are excited to be with him. And he's just like, yeah.
Maybe you should write another book, How to Neglect Your Children and Throw a Fit on Instagram 101.
Oh, believe me, he threw a fit on Instagram. Get this shit. This is the funniest shit. Okay, so this is from BuzzFeed News, Stephanie McNeal. I'll put the link down in the description. Okay, on Saturday, lifestyle guru Dave Hollis spent more than 2 hours on Instagram Live promoting his new book. It didn't go well.
Oh.
Appearing from what he called his, quote, patio of peace at home, Dave said he had gotten up at the crack of dawn to ask his more than 400,000 Instagram followers to buy Built Through Courage, Face Your Fears to Live the Life You Were Meant For, which came out on October 26th. Instead of providing a convincing argument, his live devolved into a bizarre, rambling, and at times incoherent rant in which he demanded his followers spend, quote, $18 stinking on his book or unfollow him. Okay. Quote, I would prefer to lose all of the people who are not interested in buying the thing that I have dedicated the last 18 months of my life to, than allow you to show up and breach our contract, he said.
My God.
So wait a minute. The contract of what? They subscribed to Instagram, therefore they have to buy your shit? Where does Instagram's terms of service say that, Mr. Hollis? I'm really curious. But, okay. During the next 2 hours, he spoke in the third person.
Oh, that's always fun.
Yeah. Told followers he would autograph the socks he was wearing and send them to a follower who bought the book. And he said this was basically like an award for, quote, for finally making a good choice. Okay. And declared his book would change the life of anyone who reads it. When a commenter said they had, quote, no job and no money to buy the book, Dave responded, this $18 would be the fastest route to you getting paid. Boy, does that sound like a shyster. Spend $18 on my book and you'll make money right away. Okay, wow. Snake oil salesman. Now, when his 4-year-old daughter Noah repeatedly asked him to make her breakfast and for extra gummy vitamins, he sarcastically told her to, quote, get a life.
Wow.
And told her to, quote, take it down a notch. At one point, he yelled at the camera, I bled into this, talking about the book.
Oh my God.
Dave will also likely struggle to convince his followers that his Instagram rant was a momentary blip, not a revelation of his real persona. So he does this 2-hour Instagram live where he's completely ignoring his kid. He's yelling at his followers that they breached his non-existent contract or a contract that only existed in your head.
He has a contract, damn it.
And then there's something that I notice in these influencers that they tend to do when they screw up. They'll do an apology, and during the apology, they say some variation of, I don't recognize who that person was who made that video. And that tends to be people who are getting videos that they posted years and years and years ago that are now being like thrown in their face. They're saying...
Because they've had so much self-improvement and personal growth.
Right. Yeah. So people, they will say, you know, I don't recognize that person. Okay? But usually when people say that, it's because it's been years.
Right.
He said that the next day. How much growth and development did you do from yesterday, sir? So, Mr. Dave Hollis pretty much lost his goddamn mind. God. And this whole article kind of goes into how Hollisville is not doing well.
Hollisville.
That's what they call it. All right.
Is that close to Whoville?
Yes. It's the ghetto of Whoville.
Oh, okay. It's Whoville adjacent.
Exactly. Okay. So let's get into the Theranos of it all. We got 3 weeks of trial to talk about and 3 episodes of John Carreyrou's podcast to catch up on. So let's talk about the trial. Week 8 really was the most fascinating for me simply because the strategy that that Elizabeth Holmes' lawyers took is a risky one. They're walking on this fine edge that I'm going, I don't know if this is a good argument to make, guys, but okay. So at one point, a woman named Lisa Peterson was called by the prosecution to testify. Lisa Peterson is, or I don't know if she still is, but she worked for something called RDV Corporation. RDV Corporation is the DeVos family's business.
Right.
Right. This is like a rich people thing.
Oh,
they have
Betsy and them.
Yeah, they have a whole business that just manages their wealth and tries to keep it, you know, as generational wealth for as long as possible. Holmes and Balwani really targeted rich families like the Waltons, like the DeVosses. Right. And they really leveraged kind of 2 things. One, they leveraged the whole FOMO thing. Oh, the Waltons are in on it. Oh, the Waltons.
Oh, well, if the Waltons do it, then I could, you know, yeah.
Exactly.
That kind of shit,
That's number 1. And number 2, they leveraged this idea of generational wealth. That this was something that was going to ensure that they are wealthy for years and years and years to come. Okay. So now here was what was interesting. And this whole Pfizer report that they forged, this has done more for me to illuminate why people didn't do their due diligence. And you and I talked about this in our deep dive. We just kept saying over and over, does Walgreens and Safeway just not do any sort of vetting before they start handing over tens of millions of dollars?
If that's the case, I'm going to Walgreens when we get done. I've got this
Can
spray.
I book a meeting?
I have this magic spray.
I know.
And if you
came up with that idea of skin tea water.
Yeah, you know, I mean, come on. Just...
But that Pfizer 55-page report really has illuminated a lot for me as to why so many people didn't question it. Because who in the world would think that somebody would have the balls to forge a Pfizer report like that? Who would think?
Because
that somebody has the balls to even do that.
I personally would be so afraid to forge like a report like that because I don't want to go to prison.
Thank you.
That's the train of thought. Well, if I forge that, that's the same thing as forging a check or forging, you know, adding a couple zeros to your paycheck before you deposit the hard cash, you know, the check. Most people, because they're in their right minds, are not actually criminals, aren't going to do that. She's a criminal.
Thank you.
She's a white-collar criminal. And they're, I think, worse than somebody who'd knock you over your head and take your car. I think because you are not expecting it.
Exactly.
You're not expecting it.
Now, here is what is odd. The defense's strategy in attacking her, not gonna lie, I feel like it worked a little bit from some of the things some of the articles I was reading online. I was like, are y'all really falling for this? But okay. The defense's strategy in questioning her was basically, well, why didn't you do your due diligence? You should have done more research to figure out that this was a fraud.
They
It's
did
your fault.
the only research they felt like they needed to do was seeing that the Walton family had gotten in on it, or whoever else had gotten in on it.
But the problem is the defense is questioning this Lisa Peterson person, saying, well, you didn't do your due diligence, so it's your fault you got scammed. It's not my client's fault for scamming you.
No, and
it's
honestly,
your fault
right,
that you got scammed.
And I get that, because
that's a weird
is a weird defense. Like, yeah,
that's a fine line.
You
to
drive
be
a Jag. That's your own fucking fault. Well, you got carjacked. You know.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah.
It's
I get that.
weird.
That's a weird ass defense. To me, it doesn't seem like that's. Like,
it doesn't seem pretty smart.
But now, so when you use that as a defense, now are you admitting that your client?
What they seem to be trying to say is, well, again, going back to the opening statement where they said failure is not a crime, they're still trying to present this as these investors weren't defrauded. They are investors and they should know the risk that they could lose their money. The defense is taking this tactic of, well, you lost your money not because of fraud, but because the company failed. But that's still, that's not taking into account the fraud. Yes, if it was just a company that failed, sure. But the problem is, before it failed, it committed fraud.
I need $7 from everybody to invest in my skin tea water.
Thank you. It's a weird defense that I don't know how effective it's going to be. But, okay, fine. Here is an article from The Verge by Nicole Wetsman. I'll put the link down below. And this kind of dives into the whole Lisa Peterson thing a little bit. Theranos said a lot of things to Lisa Peterson that made the company seem credible when she evaluated it on behalf of the crazy wealthy DeVos family. One of the things that stood out as a reason to trust Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, its device didn't need FDA approval. And this is something key we're going to talk about today. This made it seem more credible that the machines worked, said Peterson, who works on investments for the DeVos clan, including former Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, moron, and who testified today during U.S. versus Elizabeth Holmes. So for some background, it's true that Theranos didn't need FDA approval to start using its tests and devices. That's because they were considered, quote, lab-developed tests, a category of tests developed and used within a single lab, which means they don't have to go through typical FDA process. Just because something is a lab-developed test isn't necessarily a reason not to trust that it works as well as advertised, but it's definitely not a reason to have, quote, more trust that a test is reliable. Treating the lack of FDA approval as the reason to bet on Theranos was a small aside in Peterson's testimony. It was just one reason she thought Theranos seemed like a good investment. Skepticism of the regulatory process is also one of the reasons Theranos board member General Jim Mattis wasn't concerned with some of the company's actions, something the powerful conservatives seem to have in common. But it set the tone for a day of testimony about the DeVos' family approach to its $100 million investment in Theranos. You heard that right. $100 million. Which seemed to be more about shiny things and FOMO than the science behind the blood testing device Holmes promised would change the world. Peterson volunteered to take the lead on assessing Theranos after hearing about the company and Holmes from Jerry Tubergen, the CEO of the DeVos family office. The company sent her 2 large binders with information on the blood testing tech, and she sat on a call with Holmes in early October. Then she took a trip with members of the family out to Palo Alto, where they spent 5 hours at Theranos headquarters. There was a lot to bolster the case for Theranos. Peterson said the documents and conversations with Holmes gave the impression that the company could perform hundreds of tests using just a fingerstick of blood. A document with the Pfizer logo seemed to show that the Theranos tech was used and validated by major pharmaceutical companies. The company had a major contract with Walgreens. Nothing about any of those materials raised red flags to Peterson, but Peterson didn't look that closely. The relatively poor due diligence was a theme that Lance Wade, Holmes' attorney, hammered during cross-examination. Wade showed her charts from the Pfizer-branded report, asking if she understood the scientific test the documents showed. She said she didn't. He asked if she scrutinized Theranos' list of patent filings. She hadn't. "I'm not a scientist," Peterson said. "I can't figure out if those things were lending credibility to what they were saying." The documents looked science-y, and apparently that was good enough. The DeVos family didn't hire any scientists to review the materials
Science-y.
either. Yeah. They didn't bring in regulatory experts or lawyers. They didn't go visit one of the Walgreens stores in Arizona. Peterson didn't even call Walgreens. Peterson said that was partly because she was afraid of upsetting Holmes. This was key. Nobody wanted to upset her because she really was the gatekeeper. And it's not a publicly traded company. She can say yes or no to selling you shit. And they were afraid of missing out.
Greed is a sin. That's all I'm going to say. Stupidity should be a sin as well. I just don't understand how you are going to... I don't know, maybe I've been poor too long. Somebody want to give me some money so I can find out how the other side lives. I'm not giving nobody $100,000, $150 million.
No.
I'm not giving nobody any fucking money over some shit that may or may not be true.
Now, you know what one of her lawyer's arguments was? Well, at the bottom of the Pfizer, quote unquote Pfizer report, it listed Theranos' address in like small print at the bottom. And her lawyers were pointing to that saying, well, it has Theranos' address on it, not Pfizer's. That should indicate that Pfizer isn't the one that wrote it.
Again, people who are not privy, I guess you could say, or familiar with how these sort of reports are supposed to look. Mm-hmm. How would they know to look for that?
Thank you.
How would you know to look for that?
It's a weird stretch. So that was a summary of week 8. Week 9, this Lynette Sawyer person, I'm sorry, some of these doctors that they hired, these laboratory scientists that they hired, pretty much to just sign paperwork. I honestly wonder if these people should still ever get jobs. Because some of them quit, but honestly, you should have picked up on the fact that this was fucking shady way earlier than, 6 months of signing off on documents. Never saw the lab. Laboratory directors that never saw the lab, never saw the machines, never met any of their coworkers. Some of them didn't know that they were actually only one of like 4 different directors. They thought they were the only one. Just bizarre. It was like a shell game of employees that they kind of just had to sign because that's all they needed.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to have somebody with an official title to sign off on certain things.
Now, I am a little concerned about, there's 2 things. Number 1, the judge. The judge in this case apparently is just the most infuriating slowpoke.
Oh, God.
Everybody has, I read this whole breakdown of it, that he just keeps everything going forever. He'll say things that most other judges will say as an indication of, okay, I've made my ruling, we're moving on.
Right.
He doesn't do that. He says the thing that other judges will say, and then that's an invitation for like 3 more hours of discussion. And he's really making it very difficult. It's also helping it's also helping the defense because he's letting the defense drag everything out. Because the longer they drag it out, especially in this case, the more confused people are going to get, the more like nodding off they're going to do, not really paying attention, and she's going to get off. So it's kind of working
to their favor.
And the prosecution isn't really doing themselves very many favors. They ended up having to drop one of the charges because there was a person that was supposed to testify that they've given the pseudonym BB. And BB was supposed to testify, but they put in the paperwork. And some of this is under seal, so we don't have all the details. But they put in in the court paperwork that the test that was run was the specific test and it was wrong. It was the person that got bad results. But the test that they listed in the court paperwork was the wrong test. So the judge basically threw that out. That person's not going to testify, and they had to drop that charge because they didn't do the paperwork right. So then this last
But they have other examples of that though, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's still making me a little nervous. They had over 200 witnesses that they had on the list that they might call. Mm-hmm. They've only gotten through 23, and they've indicated they're going to do their closing arguments next week.
Wow.
Oh, there was a guy that testified this week that I thought this was interesting. This is from a Business Insider article that I'll post down below. Eisman spoke of Balwani being, quote, hostile and aggressive towards him. In response to an email from Eisenman, I think I'm saying that wrong, about potentially selling his shares, Balwani wrote back, "Your emails are insulting, full of inaccurate statements, and wasteful of our time. Our next response to this email and your future emails will come from our counsel." And this was just somebody asking basic questions. Somebody who had given them $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, if I give you $1 million, I'm going to have some fucking questions.
Thank you. Okay, so that was pretty much the recap of the trial. I'm still not confident that she's going to be convicted of anything meaningful. Fingers crossed. We will see what happens.
I honestly don't think she's going to be convicted of anything meaningful. And I think within 2 years, probably less, she'll be back in the news with
of course,
with some other so-called business venture.
Because she's hooked up with a wealthy family that can invest in her future whatevers.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk
and
about...
I bet you $1 she'll get the same investors she had on this bullshit for her new scam.
Oh yeah.
They'll build the fucking DeVosses, all those fucking people will still be willing to give her
Tim
money.
Draper, the guy that said, "I wouldn't back her as a CEO, but I back her as a scientist." Motherfucker, she's not a scientist.
Right.
She was an engineering student who dropped out after 2 years. She's not a scientist, okay? And anybody who keeps saying that, "I wouldn't trust her as a CEO, but I trust her as a scientist," well, then you're extra stupid. Oh, my God. All right. So that's been the court recapping. We got to get into the last 3 episodes. Really only 2. This last week's episode of John Carreyrou's podcast, honestly, was more heartbreaking than anything else. I felt really bad. But the other 2 episodes we do have to talk about. Now, this might be TMI. I apologize, but I do feel the need to say it. John Carreyrou and this podcast, John Carreyrou floods my basement.
Well, floods her basement.
I'm loving the details he's giving in these podcast episodes is just perfect. It's so good. It's so good. One of his episodes I felt like was just a love letter to us. and I'll get there. So let's talk about his episode about the demos. Wow. This is a whole episode breaking down how they faked these demos. It's damn impressive.
Wow.
Get this shit. So they had what they called VIP demos. They had a dedicated room in Theranos' headquarters or at the Walgreens locations in visits that were highly choreographed. Okay. John Carey Bruce is the person who actually he explained how the process worked, which was the blood sample taken by the visitors would be discreetly taken from the room and brought to him for manual analysis at a bench, and he would determine the results. That's not a
magic
miraculous
machine.
No, that's a person. It's not even like an Advia machine. It was literally a person who sat and processed the results. That's not revolutionary. Just in case y'all were confused. All right. Now, here is where Theranos felt they were justified in still saying that it was using Theranos tech. When you have to dilute things in laboratories, you can develop your own kind of special blend of fluids that you can use for different processes. They developed their own, and they felt that their little solutions qualified for them to be able to say, oh, this is run with Theranos technology, because they came up with a recipe for these little diluent thingies. Okay.
These fucking criminals will find a loophole in anything.
Mm-hmm. Now, all the demos were done with manual testing, this manual testing sleight of hand thing, until August 2013, when they figured out how to hack into the Siemens Advia machines and get them to run smaller samples. So I talked
So wait.
I think I just broke Tanya again.
So wait. Theranos has a machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to put your blood in. They're going to tell you what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But we really don't have it. So we're either going to use a guy who's going to be sitting there looking at your blood, or we're going to use our competitors' technology.
That we've modified.
That we've modified and probably fucked it up.
They did.
To give you some wonky-ass results.
Exactly.
Good luck.
You pretty much nailed it. So what they did was they got these, they were called the Siemens Advia. Mm-hmm. They got them, they basically just like hacked into them and modified them to run smaller samples. And then just like we talked about in the deep dive, they would take those finger stick samples and dilute them twice to get enough of a sample to run on the Advia, and then it would spit out a result. More than likely wasn't accurate because you've diluted it twice. There's nothing to do. So
that's just
no one ever caught on. And the answer, like how they didn't catch on, this is where my brain just went. It was a software that Theranos developed to hide what was actually going on in the machine, which was literally nothing. Not figuratively nothing. Nothing. Okay? Get this. On August 13th, 2013, they hosted Walgreens executives. They were about to launch in Arizona in Walgreens. So these 6 Walgreens executives came to make sure everything was ready. Okay, fine. So they had a room that they set up to look just like the Walgreens locations. Mm-hmm. And they brought them in. And Dan Edlin, who was Christian Holmes's buddy from college, that had become like Elizabeth's de facto chief of staff, emailed them with which machine numbers and types were in the room, and that they were set with, and this is key, quote, set with demo app set to run null protocol on all of them. They decided to just go with 2 of the newer models. Walgreens exec that we talked about a couple episodes ago named Nim Javari was told specifically that these were the machines that would be used, not those specific machines in the room, because there were 6 of them. But they made it seem like we're going to take your blood samples, we're going to take them back to the lab where they will be run on machines just like this. Total BS. There was a team of scientists waiting to run them. All right. And they were all emailed with, like Elizabeth and Sonny were emailed during every step of the process. So they can't say they didn't know that this is how it was happening. They were notified. Okay, they've got the blood samples. They're working on them. They knew what they were doing.
Right.
So here's what's interesting. On the Theranos machine, with that statement, set to run demo app and with null protocol. Here's what that means. Sonny explained this in his SEC deposition. He was so fucking proud of himself, like the moron that he is. Sonny in his SEC deposition proudly tells them when they ask him, what does this null protocol mean? He says, it refers to nothingness. Basically, you're telling the machine not to do anything. And then he says, I brought this concept from the software world to the world of medical devices.
Nothing?
Nothing?
You brought nothing.
Nothing.
You literally brought nothing to the show.
And he's bragging about that.
And you're pleased with yourself, right?
Yes, he is.
Boy, you really think a lot of yourself.
So
sir.
what he said to them basically was, It means, it's going to go through the motions and make
But it's not going to do
noises,
anything.
But it's not actually going to do anything.
So it's going to fake the funk.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fuck? So then they really, this is what's killing me, is they basically are just admitting to,
Yeah.
like, we didn't really have the technology and we wanted to give them something. Mm-hmm. So we came up with this instead, so that, you could see the lights and whistles, but they really didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It gets worse, believe it or not. So the machine would take the cartridge and it whirled and made noises, but it didn't do jack shit. And the list of problems with the machines were long and would have taken years.
I need to figure out a scam,
to
man.
solve.
I'm sick of working. I'm going to find a scam.
If there was a malfunction in the device, the demo, so we know what the null protocol is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the demo app was something they developed that would kick in and prevent an error message from displaying. So it would just get stuck at 70%, and the Theranos person would know, that means it's stuck. Let's just get them out of the room and we can reset the
without
machine.
it saying error on it.
Take the cartridge out, take it, run it, come back and say, here's your results.
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
So that's what they did. Now, results of 3 tests for Javari, one of the 6 Walgreens folks that showed up, came back super wonky. But they didn't want to redraw them. So they just left those 3 off his report and just didn't mention it. Now, later when he was told in a deposition, because those 3 results were things that detected liver problems, he was like, they were...
I mean, that would be alarming.
They were bad? They didn't tell me. He didn't know that until years later during this deposition. I'd be a little upset.
So, dude's been running around with liver issues for 7 years, and nobody thought to be like, oh shit. Yet again, another fucking reason. Mm-hmm. Another fucking reason to say,
this bitch should be in jail.
You should be in jail. You could have killed people.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Now, a year after this, Theranos was kind of riding high. They'd raised several $100 million, and they were had a valuation of over $9 billion. And those cover stories came out, launched her into the public, and now she was the celebrity that she clearly craved to be. Now, she was advertising more than that it could run. Her machines could run more than 200 tests, but they could only do half of them on fingerstick, 12 on the fingerstick samples, and themselves with the machine, 12
total.
But
in the whole world,
the other 60 they could do on the modified Siemens Advia machines.
Well, that's because they have stolen. Like, wouldn't you want? Wait, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so if you're going to use your fake machine for less, for 12, right? Mm-hmm. But the shit you stole, you're going to use that for 60, knowing that at some point it's going to spit out something at some point. Mm-hmm. So then you look like what you're doing is legitimate. Yeah. It's smart. It's smart to think of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it, but...
Smart from a fraud standpoint.
It's smart from right.
Not smart from from
an actual
trying to do business in the long run.
Right, from an upstanding business model kind of deal. It's not really. I think it's frowned upon at least.
Frowned upon.
That's fucking nuts. Well, I'm going to make it my mission the next few weeks to come up with something that I can do. And I'm going to need everybody to pitch in on it and tell your friends. When you
get a weird email from us, just send $5.
Just send $5. That's all. If you're feeling spunky, you can send $7. I don't really, but I'm going to. Now,
the demo that they set up in an actual Walgreens, this one is where there's a holy grail email that there is. It's sad to me that the prosecutors I know have this email, but still she might get off. Here's what happened. They were courting an investment from a place called BDT Capital. BDT Capital is a big goddamn deal. Mm-hmm. They were looking to invest like $500 million in this. They didn't, right?
In the Wizard of Oz of medicine.
Yeah. Pretty much. And they were going to try to bring in additional people for another $350 million.
So these big companies.
But they vetted it.
Okay, so they had enough fucking sense. Well, because that's what they do. Like,
Yes.
and we all know how what's the word I'm looking for?
How she smoozes old men.
Right, that, and then some of the people that she was dealing with, like Betsy DeVos,
Aren't
really
sharpest-
the brightest crayon in the box.
Yeah.
So maybe she preys on people like that because she knows that they're easy targets. But when these people come around, what do they call it? BDSM or whatever? What'd you say?
BDT.
There you go.
BTS.
Whatever.
Oh my God, I love you so much.
Those people come around, you're like, hey, this looks like a good idea. But hold the fucking presses.
Well, I mean, he like, most old men totally fell for her, but he still tried to do his due diligence.
Right.
They didn't have just like one demo. They had multiple.
Right.
And eventually they decided not to invest. There wasn't really a clear reason as to why. But here's the thing. They went to a Walgreens and they knew they were coming to this Walgreens. So it was highly choreographed. Christian Holmes sent an email. So Elizabeth Holmes' brother sent an email to Elizabeth and Sonny the night before. He says, quote, assumption here from Elizabeth is that we must not do Venus draw. We should not tell them that order prompts Venus if it does. Venus is a regular blood draw. The email went along to outline 2 options to prevent a Venus draw because the issue was what they were doing in real life at Walgreens was they were telling them, your doctor has ordered a test that the machine can't do, so we have to do a regular blood draw. But they needed to avoid that with these BDT people. Right. So under no circumstances, no matter what their tests are requesting, we will not do a Venus draw, period. Okay? So the email went along to outline 2 options to prevent a Venus draw. The first was to drop the test that couldn't be run by the finger stick from the BDT capital order. But the second was to drop the test and not tell them and hope they wouldn't notice. One of the, quote, negatives Christian wrote was that the receipt printed by the Theranos app would only show the tests performed, and that might lead executives to notice that some of their tests were missing. He wrote, this is the killer. They've got this email. He wrote that as that happens, there's a woman named Sierra. They even knew who the name of the Walgreens person was. Sierra can distract them from looking at the receipt as she welcomes them into the blood draw room. So they have an email where they are choreographing how to trick these people into thinking that all of their tests that their doctor ordered are being run.
By a big boobed blonde bitch named Sierra.
Probably.
Who's gonna
distract them.
Hi, fellas.
Welcome to Walgreens Theranos Testing Center.
Rare. What the fuck? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I like to think I'm a pretty savvy person, right? Like, I can spot some bullshit.
Yes, you can.
I can spot some bullshit. There's a saying, like, whenever I was younger, game recognizes game. Yeah. Right? The whole thing just sounds fucking fishy as a tuna boat to me, because I just really don't believe in your magic fairy dust machine. I just don't.
No.
I don't know. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that so many people were so fucking stupid to believe that this lady had like a magic box.
Well, we're going to talk about that when we talk about the next episode. Okay. So when the SEC, of course, confronted her with all this, she was, I don't remember. Yeah. But they also were asking her, because there were multiple. When they started doing the investigation, they found that for a lot of these demos, they would just drop bad results or results that they didn't think were accurate.
Wait,
so if they take my blood, right, and my blood says, oh, she's got, she is in complete liver failure, right? But they're looking at me and they're going, she looks healthy. We think that that's wrong.
You're good. Yeah. Oh.
They just drop it. And when the SEC confronted her about this, she was like, well, my understanding is that if you have concerns about the value, you don't report the value.
If you have concerns about the value, don't you rerun it?
Thank you.
You rerun it,
but they didn't ever want to do that because that would indicate that there was a problem.
That's just me thinking like that they would rerun. If there's a concern, that they would rerun it to make sure.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, I must have had how many weeks of blood done before I even started, like, my treatment process. I mean, they took blood from me I went to the doctor, like,
yeah,
before I started treatment, like 3 weeks after I got diagnosed.
Yeah, you were living at the doctor's.
They were just like, this is why we're giving you a port, because your veins, like, we've done your hand, your arm, everything, you know, because they rerun the same things, and all of the lab work says the same fucking thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that they rerun it to make sure.
You would think.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Like, say you did have liver failure like that guy, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're walking around just thinking, well, today's Tuesday, I'm feeling good, and blap, you're dead. Mm-hmm. Come to find out, it's because these people just dropped, again, medical negligence. Mm-hmm. Negligence. Do they have, I wonder if she had to have some sort of malpractice insurance or something.
That's a
running
good question.
This. I wonder if she had to have some sort of malpractice insurance, because you would think, like, since she's dealing with the medical stuff, that there would...
Great question. If anybody knows the answer to that, that's a great question. Did she? That's a really good question. Mm-hmm. So that was the demo episode. Now we're going to talk about the last episode we're going to talk about is one that he titled The Military. And this one I really feel like was the love letter to us. Uh-huh. Because this was the episode where he really broke down how once you got past, because her first step was to schmooze old men.
Right. And
charm the fucking socks off of them.
Right.
Right. But once it got to the next level down of people who would actually have to implement this shit in the real world, they saw through it like that. Well, and the military is the example. So she started off with, she got Mattis. She had met him. Now, once again, this is like timing. Her timing was very lucky.
Yeah.
Mattis was still in the military at the time when she met him. He had, just a few weeks before meeting her, he had lost 38 soldiers in Afghanistan. Okay. And they weren't able to actually identify the remains until they got them all the way back to the States.
Right.
And it was a very emotional time for him. And she was able to swoop in and say, oh, well, we could run that DNA testing on the machine in the field. So we could have identified them right away.
Could you imagine how awful would that be that they have misidentified, okay, here's the list, I need you to match the remains with this list. Mm-hmm. And you're just playing, remember that game whenever you were in grade school and they would put like one set of words on one side and one set on the other, and you had to draw a line to what went with what?
Yeah.
I feel like that's what she was going to do.
Oh my God, you're probably right.
Right.
So in September 2014, she was interviewed by Ken Aletta from The New Yorker. And he was telling her off the record, quote unquote, that her machines were being used in medevac helicopters. Now, he pressed her on this again, and he's released those recordings because his feeling is, yeah, she said it off the record, but that was based on a relationship of trust. She clearly lied to me. All the crap that she told me off the record. Good for you, Ken Aletta. Good for you.
He said off the record.
Mm-hmm. Now, the real story of her attempts to actually work with the Department of Defense were ridiculous and almost comical. But the lowly bureaucrats like us, bitch slapped her ass.
Well, yeah.
It's kind of amazing. So, Shoemaker. We talked about Shoemaker in our deep dive. He was the guy that had been tasked by the military to try to figure out, because Mattis wanted this done. He wanted this machine in Afghanistan ASAP.
And I get it. I understand why. I mean...
Absolutely.
I get it.
But he was he said, no, we can't. Unlike what some people think, we cannot just test on soldiers. It's still without FDA approval. It still has to be.
You know why?
approved.
Because a soldier is government property.
Mm-hmm.
They're government property. You cannot just fuck around with government property.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had any knowledge about the United States military, you would know that. I remember that because I remember when my mom was pregnant with my little brother, and we were stationed in Fort Benning, and my dad was supposed to go downrange. My mom was having some complications, and they told my dad, if the United States military had wanted you to have a wife, we would have issued you one.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, because that was, that's back in the 70s, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the mindset of a lot of military people. Like, you're government property.
Absolutely.
You are government property.
So Shoemaker had actually come to Theranos to talk about it. And within 15 minutes, he stopped her pitch and pointed out the biggest hurdle, FDA approval. You can't test without it. Right. She got all pissy, and he kind of backed off because she was such a brat about it. But
but I want to do it on a soldier, guys.
But here was what Sonny and her told him. And this is also something that, if this was said in the book, I must have missed it. But this was also very clarifying for me. Their justification as to why they felt they didn't need FDA approval. Get this shit. Their reasoning was their lab was certified to be a lab by the state of California. And that because of that, the machine would remotely send the data back to Palo Alto. And the machine itself wasn't actually giving you the results. It was a person in the lab in California. So it's not really being done by the machine.
So by proxy.
Yeah. And he was like, Shoemaker was like, no.
That's not how this
and
is
he told
work.
them, if you, that legal, and they said, oh, we have lawyers that agree with this regulatory strategy and all this bullshit. And Shoemaker said, fine. If you get a special dispensation from the FDA saying, yes, they agree with this, then we can talk. But not until you get that. He went back and forth with them for a few weeks, and finally he went to the FDA and asked, is this okay? And it set off alarm bells with the FDA. And the FDA showed up and flat out was like, we heard this is what you think you're going to do. You're not. Liz threatened to sue Shoemaker personally for saying all these horribly false things about us. He didn't say anything false about you. He told the FDA exactly what shenanigans you were up to.
Right. What fuckery you were trying to instill.
Thank you.
Get the fuck out. It just kills me. Like, people like her really believe that they are just so above the law.
Oh, absolutely.
She really thinks that she's above the law. And when she gets off, it'll prove it to her. And she will start on another venture.
That particular one felt... Shoemaker said that he felt Sonny and Elizabeth had really and truly believed that they had come up with the most brilliant loophole that was going to make this work. It's kind of like a kid that says to their parents, well, I told you I brushed my teeth, but I didn't tell you I brushed my teeth tonight. Therefore, I did not lie to you.
Right.
It's like a child.
Right.
And they were all fucking proud of it. Like they thought it was brilliant.
Oh my God.
Now that's when Mattis demanded to meet, of course, because this all went down, she bitched to Mattis. Mattis summoned Shoemaker. Shoemaker actually went, but he went with somebody from the FDA to explain to Mattis. The FDA person saying, Shoemaker's right. This can't happen like this.
Right.
But that's when they decided to actually do that, what we talked about in our deep dive, which was the post-incident, blood post-incident, to see if the Theranos machines could actually detect it. Most laboratory companies would be thrilled with that. Didn't happen. Because she didn't actually have the machine to test.
No.
So eventually he retired from the military and joined her board. He was prohibited for, I believe it's a year. After you get out of the service, you can't use your relationships to solicit business, whatever, for at least a year, I think. So eventually she went to the Navy. she went to Admiral Gary Roughhead, who had retired from the Navy and had joined her board again. And he reached out to somebody named Wagar, who was in charge of vetting pitches like this for the Army and Navy. And because it came from somebody as prestigious as Admiral Roughhead, he was like, oh, okay, absolutely. We'll take this meeting. So they said, let's set up a demo. So Sonny and Elizabeth sent Christian and Dan Edlin to do the demo. Mm-hmm. This was a disaster. But this was the part that I felt was just like a love letter to us. Because these people in this demo meeting were the people like us. The people who actually have to make the shit work. Not just people you can schmooze and gloss over the funny details. No. We need to know the details because we're the people that have to figure this shit out. They saw through them in a hot second. But
could you imagine sitting around Applebee's that night talking about, can you believe this shit?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what the fuck?
Now, Christian and Dan were perturbed that these lowly people kept, because they were trying to go through their very well-rehearsed spiel.
Right.
And when they actually got to things like results and digging into the data, these guys were asking them questions like, wait, and they were interrupting the flow, I guess.
Right.
And they were like, wait. And they said, no, we'll send you the PowerPoint later. And they eventually even recognized it as what they called con ops. It was long on con ops and heavier and light on actual data. Because they didn't have it.
Right.
And Dan and Christian were just absolutely offended that these lowly bureaucrats were daring to question them. They were used to everybody just fawning all over themselves.
Right, like, oh my God, look at this.
But again, these are the people that actually have to make it work.
Right.
So they start asking questions. Hey, well, we're going to need to inspect inside the device before we can let it onto a military vehicle. And they were like, no, you can never look inside the device.
Because there's nothing in there but somebody's Snicker bar they left while they were putting it together.
But they're like, you can't put anything on a military vehicle that has not been inspected. And you certainly can't hook it up to the military's network unless it's been inspected. And these morons are like,
definitely can't get it on a military base unless
these morons are like, oh, well, we're not going to hook it up to your network. We'll just use cell tower coverage. In Afghanistan.
I'm going to hotspot my phone. Hold on. Get the fuck out of here.
That was they actually flat out laughed at them. They were like, really? That's your brilliant plan? Cell coverage in a war zone. Okay. Probably not going to happen.
Oh, I need a scam. Bitches.
So they also pointed out that it would have to be tested to make sure that not only did it work in a lab, but it could work in the air, in the sea, whatever.
Right, in 200-degree weather.
Thank you. Now, the other thing that concerned them was this theory of, we don't need FDA approval because we're going to send this information to the lab in Palo Alto. The military didn't like that because they're saying, wait a minute, there's a circle of trust when it comes to injuries and casualties.
Right.
We're not comfortable with this information being
common
shared
knowledge
with this random lab tech in Palo Alto that we haven't vetted. We don't know who they are. It was concerning to them. And honestly, can't really say it.
Right, because you don't want somebody finding out. What if somebody is leaking that information? What if somebody is putting that information out on the internet? Because people do it all the time. And is that the way you want to find out that someone you know was hurt seriously in a war zone or died?
Thank you.
No.
Of course not. So the military folks they said it was long on con ops and short on data. And they could tell they were being conned in a hot second. They pressed for more information and kept saying, oh, it's a trade secret, blah, 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 blah. One person in the meeting flat out said, this seems like you're trying to sell us a box of Palo Alto air. They were greatly offended by that. Eventually, as like a concession, they said, oh, well, here, we'll pass around this cartridge, the white cartridge that would go into the machine. Well, one person looks at it, and the first thing he did, pulled out a Swiss Army knife and goes to cut it open because he wants to see what's inside.
What's inside of it?
Fucking Christian and Dan nearly leapt over the table to grab it, to snatch it. And they just cracked up laughing at these two morons. They were like, you realize eventually you're going to have to let this machine out into the wild. And the first thing that's going to happen is people are going to open it and see what it is. You can't NDA the entire Department of Defense.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
No. Especially, like we said earlier, in order to get any of that shit onto a military base, onto military trucks, it has to be looked at. It has to be,
of course.
It has to be looked at, especially in this day and age.
Thank you.
You know, we don't.
What if it's got spyware in it? What if it's got a explosive device in it? What if it can be hacked? What if? There's 9 million things. And that's what these bureaucrats that they felt were just so beneath them. These are the people that actually have to make it work. And one of the dudes was being interviewed for the podcast, and he was just like, they really just felt they could shortcut their way to everything. He's like, and for people like me, we are the people that are the sticklers for the rules for a reason.
Yeah.
To protect, because otherwise, what do you get? You get the DeVos family that just throws money at something without doing their due diligence. The military has to. And they couldn't. Eventually, they let it go. They just were like, okay. But they continued to tell investors for years that they were still working with the DOD.
Oh.
They still told people that all the time. But it was off the record all the time.
Off the record. Mm-hmm. See, I don't trust anything off the record anyway.
No. But the last episode of the podcast was really, really sad. It kind of broke my heart. It was going into more details about George Schultz and his grandson, Tyler Schultz. Mm-hmm. You know, the grandpa that took Elizabeth's side over his. And it really kind of delved into that relationship and that strain on the relationship a little bit deeper. Uh-huh. And it was sad because, and we talked about this in the deep dive, Tyler, it was very important to him. And I thought this was amazing, especially for how young he was, that he felt that his grandfather had come through Watergate and Iran-Contra with his integrity intact.
Right.
And he wanted to make sure that his grandfather was alive long enough to make it right, to fix his reputation. And unfortunately, his grandfather never really apologized. He stuck by her for a long time.
Right.
Eventually, he put out statements praising Tyler, but still never apologized for what he did. And it was kind of sad because when he passed, every article talking about it mentioned that kind of stain on his legacy.
Right.
And I find that to be very, very sad.
That really is, especially
that she really did cause a huge rift in that family.
Well,
like he wasn't welcome to his grandfather's birthday party, and she was.
And she ate that shit up too. She ate that shit up.
She absolutely
The narcissist in her,
she loved it.
Sociopath in her ate that shit
up. She loved it. I guarantee you she loved having that control. Because at one point, she actually came to, I think it was a Thanksgiving dinner. And this was a point where he had quit. The articles hadn't come out, but their relationship had really ended badly. And she made a toast saying, I just want to say how much I appreciate every member of the Schultz family, just to fucking rub it in to him that I'm here. I'm here and you have to deal with me because your grandfather considers me to be part of your family.
She is such a piece of work.
Gnarly bitch.
Yeah. Oh, that's awful.
She's so frustrating. And it's just so frustrating because I still feel like she's going to get off. And it pisses me off.
I'm like 99% sure she's going to get off. Mm-hmm. Like, somebody like that, like, it really sucks. Because if I tried to pull some shit, and, of course, I'd be under the fucking prison. Mm-hmm. But somebody like her, who handled this the way that she's handled it, they're going to end up with, a book deal, a movie of the week deal. You'll see her on Lifetime pretty soon. She'll end up on Oprah, and And then in the next couple of years, she'll have some other fucking scheme that she's trying to pull. And
Oh, I'm
you know,
sure.
I'm sure.
I am absolutely
But
positive
my ass
you are
would be
1,000% right.
under the prison for the rest of my life.
Oh, yeah.
So, fuck me.
I am curious to know. Here's the thing I think would be the most interesting if it happened. If she got off, but Sonny got convicted.
Oh, my God. He would, oh, my God.
Because a part of me is like, if either one of them gets off and the other one gets convicted, I don't find that satisfactory at all. I wouldn't even consider that half a win. I would consider that just failure. Because both of them should go to prison.
Well, yeah.
Now, I think it would be, you know what? I lie. If she got convicted and he didn't, I would think that's hilarious. But I really think I'm making this prediction now. She's going to get off. He is not. There's way more evidence against him because he was the enforcer.
And she's put him in a light, too, to where she was just this poor little woman who was just doing what she was told by this big bad man.
She, like we talked about in the Lularoe thing, she stomped her foot daintily and shook her curls.
Yeah. Yeah.
To get what she wanted.
Exactly, you know.
And she got it.
And she got it. Yeah.
I want you to get me a company. A
I
laboratory
want a company now, Daddy. Get the fuck out of here.
Gross. Okay, so that is our 3-week kind of update on everything. Hopefully baby will be here soon.
Oh, I'm so sick of waiting.
I know. But he'll be here soon.
I want a baby, goddammit. I want a baby to play with.
He'll be here soon.
I know.
Promise. I will probably be recording some episodes solo to do updates after baby comes for at least a little bit because I don't want to be bugging Tanya constantly, but we will do our best to keep you guys updated. So until next time, I'm Lara Mack.
I'm Tanya Edwards.
Love your faces.
Smooches.
Like what you hear? Rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform. And follow us on our Facebook page by searching Q as in Cucumber. Don't forget to check out our other show, hosted by me and Jessica James, called The Parent Memoirs. And we want to hear from you. Share your stories by emailing us at qasincucumber@yahoo.com, and you might just hear your stories on a future episode. Love your faces.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.